So I do feel that I get pegged as a Chris Ballard apologist of sorts from you guys at times, and perhaps that's true to some degree. In fact, perhaps that is entirely true, but I would like to just clarify my stance a little bit because my constant defense of Chris Ballard on this channel isn't so much something I do because of how deeply I believe in what it is that he's doing for the Indianapolis Colts, but instead it's actually a response to the way I see the conversations about Chris Ballard being had. Like, I see the way you guys talk about him, I see what you say, and then I respond accordingly. Now, you do have to understand, one of my biggest missions, if not the biggest mission of this channel, is to make sure that I can help, or just overall, forget me in the equation, right? Make sure that we are advancing the discussion about the Indianapolis Colts further in a way that is productive and thoughtful, hopefully a bit more objective and based in reality, if nothing else. So part of me making sure that gets done is making sure the story gets told the right way. For example, let me give you an example of something that I will deal with when I'm talking about Chris Ballard, okay? People will go out and they'll say that it has been 8 years of nothing but losing and mediocrity under Chris Ballard. That is literally not true, okay? All you would have to do is go back season by season to know that is not true, okay? And then in response to that, even more so, I would go on to bring up the Andrew Luck situation and all of that whole deal, right? Which, of course, gets met with what I'm sure you're already thinking and about to type in the comments section, which is, how long is it that we can possibly use Andrew Luck as an excuse? Enough is enough on that one. Well, okay, but here's the problem with you saying that. You're the one that keeps bringing up the 8 years. You're the one bringing the timeline into it. You're the one bringing the entire reign into it, not me. I would not bring up Andrew Luck's retirement and the time that we had before that retirement if you didn't ignore those years when making a claim like it's been 8 years of nothing but losing and mediocrity. Like, I agree with you entirely if you're to say that the excuse of Andrew Luck is gone and we should not be using that to judge what it is that the Colts are doing in the direction that they're headed right now. Listen, I'm with you with that entirely, okay? But when you incorrectly claim that Chris Ballard's reign here has been nothing but trash for the Indianapolis Colts, and by that I mean the Colts have been nothing but trash his entire time here, and that we've never been a contender, and that we've never been someone that's been looking into the playoffs and saying we have a real shot here, I have to bring that side of things up. Like, I have to do it. I have to do it in response to make sure we're telling this thing the right way. For another one, when you sit there and say that Ballard's entire reign, all he has done is nothing, and he's just sat on his hands and really made no moves in free agency or the offseason, I mean, that is not true either. Now, whether or not each move worked out individually, that's an entirely separate discussion, and that's fine. But in terms of trying and taking risks, we've seen him take risks, and we've seen him get aggressive at times, even if that has not at all been the case for the past 2 off seasons. But you don't get to just retell the story and then claim that you're the one looking at the full picture, that you're the one being objective and rational. No. Now, if your response to all of what I'm saying right now is something along the lines of, his record is his record, and the results just aren't there, so we can't keep making excuses, fine. Or at least if it's something to that effect, fine. But now you notice that your argument has changed. And once your argument changes, if nothing else, you would have to be forced to admit that you weren't telling the entire story correctly. And then with that, you'd be forced to confront the fact that perhaps you haven't been fully objective in your analysis of Chris Ballard. Perhaps your emotions and love of the team, which we both share, okay, have clouded your judgment just a little bit. Now, if you just reframed your argument, understand this entirely. If you reframed your argument as something very, very simple and just said, Chris Ballard has not gotten the job done since Andrew Luck is retired, and the complacency we've seen in the roster construction these past 2 years or so needs to change, you'd hear me defend him far, far less. In fact, all you would hear me do is agree with you. You would have me on your side. But given that is not the case, and that's not the things that people are saying about Chris Ballard, you best believe that I'm going to make sure that the story gets told correctly, even if it happens to be the unpopular opinion amongst most Colts fans. Okay, now allow me to, after all of that, and a little bit of kind of a I don't even know what you'd call that, a talking to, right? Allow me to try to bring us together, because there is one thing I believe that we should be on the same page about. You may be hating Chris Ballard, me being a little bit more tolerant of what it is that is going on, okay? This offseason for Chris Ballard, this is it, okay? This is the last chance for Chris Ballard to show that he has a sense of urgency to turn the Colts into a winner, and he is not just willing to kind of sit at this 500 area and do absolutely nothing about it. Like, even the most staunch defender of a Chris Ballard is going to have a very, very tough time defending another offseason of relative inactivity. Like, he needs to get to business in a big way this offseason if they want to steer this ship in the right direction, because going into this offseason, it had to be the first time under Chris Ballard. Like, one of the things we've always been able to do under Chris Ballard to say we're one offseason away. We're one offseason away from really turning this thing into something very special. This is the first time I've gone into an offseason and said, wow, I'm not even sure we could get this all done this offseason. Like, I don't think we're one offseason again, because the Colts have a lot of needs on this team right now. Now, the good news is that when you face the reality that Chris Ballard has gone out and been aggressive before in moments where he deemed it necessary, there is some reason to believe that he's about to do it this offseason as well, primarily because of some of what he said in his end-of-season press conference. Now, I know many of you are looking at that piece of media and saying he does that apology tour every single year and says, look, it's on me, right? He does that every single year. But there are some things from this one specifically that I thought were a little bit different. Now, whether or not they're going to happen and whether or not he's going to follow through on what he's saying, we're going to find out relatively shortly. And when I say that, I mean we're going to find out this offseason. We're going to talk about what some of those things that I thought were different are. But before we do, you know what it is. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, I ask anyone watching on YouTube and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot it a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're on the quest to 5,000 right now. That's the next big goal. But if we start with 3,500, some bite-sized pieces. Of course, audio listeners, leave a 5-star review. 5-star, 5-star, 5-star. No, actually, 5 stars. Let the people know how much you're enjoying the show. We're really growing well here on YouTube. The audio one is kind of a goal for me this year. Can we continue to gradually grow that side of things and get more people kind of part of what we're doing over here? But that's all I've got to ask of you. It's time for us, of course, to get back to the content and what I viewed differently about this press conference as compared to previous ones. So the primary difference I noticed from Chris Ballard this time around was his tone, okay? The tone in which he spoke. Like, Ballard will take accountability during that press conference. He'll always say, I didn't do good enough every single time. Like, I've never heard him not do that. But generally speaking, those apologies and it's on me's are paired with like a condescending tone towards the media and the critics, and a justification of the actions that he's made to some degree. Like, on one hand, he'll be like, I didn't do good enough and I need to do better. But then on the other hand, he'll kind of defend everything he did. This was the first season that I remember him sounding humbled, not condescending, and not justifying his wrongs. Like, instead of doing what I said he normally does, he just kind of owned up to it and left it at that. And in addition to that, I felt he was far more specific than usual in saying what it was that he did wrong and what those wrongdoings resulted in. And I thought he was spot on in his assessment of doing that, right? It's one thing to come out and say, I haven't done a good enough job. Like, yeah, Chris, we got you, brother. Duh. That's why we're here in this situation. And that's ultimately why you sit here at a press conference in January as opposed to February or March. And in fact, I don't even know when you would have that press conference if not for January. I mean, that's how long it's been since we've, been consistently competing in the playoffs, okay? So yeah, Chris, we got you. We know you didn't do a good enough job. But to sit there and say instead that I've been painfully stubborn these past 2 years and that running it back with the same group of guys was a mistake that resulted in complacency in that locker room, and I'm not doing a good enough job creating stress in that locker room from a talent acquisition standpoint, and that we are not close as a team right now to where we need to be, and I need to evaluate what I'm doing and make some changes. To say that right there, well, okay, now the mask is lifted. Now I could look at what you're saying and say, you know what? I can believe you. And I know that you're not, or at least I can believe that you're not just going out there saying the right things to survive while trying to protect your ego. I can now, at minimum, go into this offseason with the peace of mind knowing that you, being Chris Ballard, have laid out exactly what it is that you're doing wrong and that it needs to change. Therefore, giving us, the fans, a clear and obvious expectation and standard in terms of how we should judge your actions this offseason, which some of us may believe that he's going to do, and some of us may not believe that he's going to do. But the beauty in all of it is that we all end up on the same page in terms of what are we trying to get done this offseason. And I thought it was made crystal clear from the way Chris Ballard handled that press conference. Clearly, he is trying to shake things up here for the Indianapolis Colts, which we all think we need, okay? And if he doesn't do that, particularly within the roster, because of course we know him and Shane are back, then he's failed by his own admission, by the standards that he laid out to us. He's failed, okay? And ultimately, even someone like myself who quote unquote drinks the Kool-Aid will stop doing that, right? If he doesn't do what it is that he basically just told us he's going to do. Now, what specifically those moves are, I'm not going to sit here and say if he doesn't do exactly what I think he should do, then he isn't doing what he should be doing, right? Because ultimately, I have an evaluation of one player, he has an evaluation of another, yada, 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 all that type of stuff. But in terms of the aggression, in terms of the urgency to win, in terms of bringing pieces in that are going to shake this thing up a little bit and challenge some of the pieces that we have on this roster that may think they're safe, okay? If he does that this offseason, at least we'll know that he wasn't full of shit in that press conference. I mean, that is all a far cry in that press conference, what he said, from doing the old, this is how I do things, and if it gets me fired, so be it. That was completely different than that press conference. Make no mistake about it. And just another quick thing. I really liked, if we're just going to talk about maybe belief in the fact that he's going to come out this offseason and really get aggressive. Of course, as he said, he doesn't want to hamstring the team, but I really liked his answers, or his answer to, was it James Boyd who asked the question? It was something very simple, but it was a hardball question, and kudos to him for asking it, right? He said, did you earn another opportunity as the Colts general manager, or were you given one? And after, saying a few things about this, that, and the next thing, ultimately Chris Ballard, his final statement in that was, he's grateful to have been given another opportunity to earn our trust, which tells me that, hey, he knows what time it is, okay? Because Chris Ballard may be stubborn, okay? He may be hard-headed, but make no mistake, okay? He's not a stupid guy, as much as it is that you might think that you can do a better job than him as the general manager of the Colts. He knows that it's either put up or shut up this offseason in terms of showing us, showing Jim Irsay, and showing everyone that needs to be shown, hey, I'm committed to making this thing a winner, okay? And I just wanted to bring that up because I feel so often I'm taking the stance of defending Chris Ballard. I wanted to make sure that I did present kind of the whole picture here for you guys so you fully know where I stand. So hopefully you've made it to this point, and if you have, I'm signing off. Like, subscribe if you have not done so yet. My name is Justin. This right here was the Ride the Bench Colts podcast, and as always, go Colts.